So thanks everybody for joining us today. I'm Fran Knight. I'll be the host for this AI reality check with our fabulous AI first squad here. So according to Wikipedia, yeah, remember that blast from the past? According to Wikipedia, in the last year, since 2024, we've moved from the age of information into the age of intelligence. And I think we can all admit that the evidence of that shift to this rapid transformation, development and integration of AI into technology, into our homes, sorry, is undeniable. You know, just in our daily lives, whether it's asking Alexa to tell you a joke or set your food alarm, using a virtual shopping assistant to take care of your weekly shop, or outsourcing your wedding speeches to ChatGPT. Most of us will have used AI in some flavor. And actually, I think in our personal lives, we're doing a really good job of seamlessly integrating the different flavors of AI that there are out there. But what does that mean in a business context? So what does that mean for software engineering, but what does it mean for business more broadly? And I guess a couple of crucial questions are, how can we optimize the use of AI to ease our working days generally? And sort of most importantly, with this rapid proliferation of AI tools out there, how do we cut through the guff to know which tools are the ones that are actually really worthwhile? So let's meet our AI first squad. We'll meet them in just a moment. But we've selected sort of 3 talking points for today's webinar. So first, we want to focus on thinking about, how do we measure the return on interest in AI? So how do we actually get some real life value or some true metrics that we can take to the C-suite? How do we understand the costs, the operational costs associated with implementing new AI? And then finally, just talking through some of the tools that we're finding that actually work. And then we'll leave a little bit of time for a live Q&A and hopefully get things a bit lively as well, following a couple of final thoughts. So let's go on and meet our dedicated team of AI first engineers who are tasked with demystifying the market and challenging and transforming your software lifecycle. A little bit about myself. As I said, I'm Fran Knight. I'm engineering lead on a really exciting project. It's implementing a greenfield piece of technology into quite a well-established business. So we're thinking about they have high requirements on the reliability of the functioning and high security needs. I'll hold my hands up and admit that actually at first I was a bit of a skeptic when it came to integrating AI into our software work cycle, but I'm now pretty much using it on a daily basis, and certainly actively encouraging my team to sort of reap the benefits of, let's say, having an AI assistant next to you. I think for me, 2 things that I've really noticed that are helpful with AI integration are just outsourcing these functions to your AI assistant, let's say, so we have a quick, rapid development of the development process, but also some sanity checking when it comes around making those key technical decisions. And I'll pass over to you, Kareem, to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hey everyone, I'm Kareem. I'm a senior consultant with Daemon. I'm based in Bristol, and really keen to be part of the AI First Squad. My background is engineering, mainly Java, React, Kafka, AWS. But I've had the pleasure of working across finance, public sector, and more recently retail. I came into AI from that world because I kept seeing the sort of same problems. So long delivery cycles, lots of manual effort, teams bogged down with repetitive work. And and I have loved improving dev experience and like creating automation. So AI just felt like the natural next step to take away those pain points and to solve them in a more efficient way.
Cool. I guess I'm next. My name is Sihle Mabalega. I'm from South Africa and I'm a senior consultant at Daemon. Classically, I'm trained as a teacher, Bachelor of Education in Maths and Science, grade 10 to 12. So the last grade's the most tough. But I pivoted to software just over 10 years ago and haven't looked back since. I think the thing that led me to the squad is really just learning something new and the culture of experimentation. I'm very much a structured thinker. I appreciate learning and I appreciate growing. So being at the precipice of something that's new and that's shaping technology and shaping the way that we interact with the world felt very exciting. It's like discovering the internet again, at least for a lot of people. I think it's one of the few things that will usher in the next billion people into technology and software. And so I'm a very big believer of this, and that's why I back it. But yeah, that's me.
I think that leaves me then. So I'm Dale. I've been with Daemon for 2 years. Before that, I used to work a lot in insurtech. And similar to C-Clay, I've only been in software for about 10 years. Before that, I used to run and manage pubs. And one of the big things for me has always been teams. So, you know, back in when I used to be in hospitality, team was everything. And it's just the same for us now. So one of the big things that drives me for AI is helping people to get better at their job and to make it easier for themselves. So I first dived into AI before Daemon. And basically, I used to work in a big legacy code base, hated it. Anyone that you tried to train up used to take ages and used to be very daunted by it. So I was looking to ways to find, to make it easier for them, you know, just to help the juniors to start off, because you know everything's a bit overwhelming. If you've got an AI system with you that helps you and goes, this is what this class does, this is the documentation for this, it makes everyone's life a bit easier, makes them more confident, and just makes your team better. So that's my big driver for why I joined the AI First Squad in Daemon.
That's lovely. I think we've got a really, really broad set of sort of interests and backgrounds going on here. Really nice. I really liked what you said there, Sihle, on the culture of experimentation. I think developers are sort of quite a naturally inquisitive bunch, right? And so to bring us on to our first topic, I think most of us will have this anecdotal evidence of how AI has really supported us in our developmental life cycles and our daily lives. But in terms of taking an operational, organizational approach to it, we really need to understand where the value add is. So I guess, how do engineering leads define and demonstrate these anecdotal pieces of evidence into tangible, concrete metrics that they can present to the C-suite and basically record the return on interest?
No, I think I'll take that first. A lot of people imagine this stuff is like magic, or at least being able to translate it as magic, or it's like something new. I think we still lead with the same things that we've led with, right? We lead with business impact instead of technical jargon as leads, right? The things that business still cares about to this day are the things that drive the outcomes for value. It's essentially, how do we improve the flow of work? It's how do we amplify feedback throughout the business so that we can make better decisions? And going back to that, it's how do we create a culture of continuous experimentation and learning, right? And to a lot of people, that might sound like magic or a breakthrough, but really those are the 3 ways of DevOps, right? And those are the things that a lot of businesses still care about to this day. And then the question becomes, how do you translate these, I guess, elements that you lead with into things that an organization appreciates? And I think that's where it's important to establish some clear boundaries, some clear baselines, as well as, I guess, a definition of done for what you are trying to achieve before a pilot goes on. It's it's really important for a team to understand why they're using AI. Just letting it loose on a team might actually be detrimental to it, because you'll find someone is annoyed during a code review that they're seeing something that shouldn't be there, right? And I think establishing those clear baselines is something that's important, as well as a definition of done. And what that looks like, right, it could be we want to reduce rework on certain things. We want to improve working cycles. We want to I guess, improve the culture of documentation, or even just our test criteria, right? Those are the little things that go in. And as a team, you decide that you benchmark on these things, on what it is that we want to see improved. For a lot of them, it's really just daily work. We really want to see our daily work improved. I don't want to feel anxious when I have to go to stand up. I don't want to feel like I'm dreadful, as an engineer at least, and as a lead, right? And those are the things that you want to make sure that your team feels secure and protected over. And that's what you are able to lead with, so that you can take it back to the C-suite, right? And getting back to the C-suite is translating these metrics into a language that they'll understand, right? So it's speed, it's culture fit, it's all of those, right? And they understand words like we've improved plan work by 80%, right? Our sprints have improved by 80%. We've reduced unplanned work by 20%. Our cadence for change has improved by this. And those are really the metrics that translates to a lot of C-suites. But to a dev squad and an engineering team, to us, it's I'm spending less time on code reviews. I'm spending less time reworking things. The test criteria that we have on our tickets now is much more clearer, or I know where to look for documentation within our team, right? And those are the little things that can be made a little bit better by AI within a team. But I think those are the little things that help you measure ROI, right? It's one, ensuring that you leave a business impact. Two, it's ensuring that at every given point, you're establishing a clear baseline, as well as a definition of done. And lastly, I guess, is translating those metrics into C-suite languages that I guess they will understand. But yeah.
I can just come in there. So CPlay mentioned a lot about metrics that C-suite understand. I think part of what people overlook is some metrics beyond delivery, things like team satisfaction or staff satisfaction. Because if you're using AI to make everyone's lives a bit easier, you're not doing those boring things anymore, your team's going to end up being happier. Your satisfaction scores will go up, and you'll find that your attrition will drop. And then there's another part of it which I think is a bit more unexpected. Because people might have a bit more time on their hands, they can start learning new things. And you'll find that not only will they have more time, they can use AI and leverage that ability to learn things quicker. So you'll find that learning velocity will increase. So at the end of it, you'll end up with happier staff, better trained staff, and people who want to stay with you for the journey, rather than dropping off, going somewhere that has shinier toys. So I think that's a big bit that people need to look at. So for me, it's not so much about your delivery metrics, about your people metrics as well. I don't know if Kareem.
Yeah, I mean, I can only add to what you guys have said. Yeah, definitely agree with C-Clay about the translation to C-suite. You need to frame the wins in the same terms that the business already cares about. And usually established businesses are already tracking these things like delivery times and incident counts, that sort of thing. Keep those as your baseline. You're not throwing them out. And that way, when AI actually comes in, you can show the change clearly from when you first sort of implemented that tool. And you have a lot of historic data to work from and compare to. So let's say, for example, you create a triage bot that cuts response times from hours to minutes, or you have this automated code review that reduces incidents. That's not a shiny new AI metric. That's progress in a language that the C-suite already understands. And Dale obviously mentioned satisfaction, and I think that's huge. If teams don't actually trust and use AI, then whatever value you thought you had is basically zero. The value that you predicted isn't going to be there. So it's worth looking at really simple measures here. So are people actively using AI? Do they come back to it after trying it? Are team satisfaction scores going up? in one space I've worked in, sort of at the business, at the high level, they're using Copilot. That's their choice. Yeah, fine. The devs in my team at the time tried it, but they were still using Claude Code and GPT, as it just suited their practices and programming style better. So yeah, that adoption is sort of proof of trust. And without it, nothing else really matters. Just to add sort of my thoughts to that, the big metric, cost saving, I'd say is the real clincher when you're having discussions with sort of the leaders of the company. And the best way to do that is to compare it against the alternatives. So just saying AI cut cycle time by 20%, that's great. But what they'll want to know is, what would we have had to do differently to get the same result? Would we have had to hire many more people, a new SaaS tool, or outsource the work and those sort of things? So showing that AI delivered faster at a lower cost and without extra complexity makes the ROI, a lot clearer. So for me, that's what I'd focus on. Using language they understand, team satisfaction and adoption, and then really demonstrating that comparison with alternatives. And if you put those together, then you've got a strong case for the C-suite, not just a good story.
I think all of those are really good points. And so what I'm hearing is that you've got this almost tension, or well, hopefully not a massive tension, but between what's important to the business, what the C-suite are really going to want to know about, and in that you've got clearly defining the metrics that are important to the specific business or use case. Let's say that's a really good point on establishing a baseline, so you know where you started from in order to know where you've got to, and then what your definition of done is. But continuing to go back to the people that are actually using it. As Karim said, it's what's the point in implementing these tools if people aren't using it, and if it's not making their lives easier. And I think that leads us really nicely on to our next topic, right, which is, so let's say an engineering lead and the C-suite have this brilliant revolutionary idea about implementing this specific AI tool into their software cycle. How can we be honest and upfront about what the operational costs of that might be? As with any new tool or process, there's going to be a bit of getting used to using that tool. So how can we think of that upfront, and what sort of strategies can we put into place?
I'll go first. So when we talk about costs with AI, it's really easy to see the obvious ones, so like license fees and cloud infrastructure. But as you said, Fran, like the harder ones to spot are those, the hidden costs. Two sort of stand out for me that we've seen during our work. And the first, and maybe other, everyone else who's tried it can agree, are the mistakes that AI can produce, especially if the tools aren't being used correctly. If and when AI suggests a dodgy code change, and then that goes on to slip through an AI code review, you'll end up with rework, instance, and possibly even an outage. And that will eat into the value in the long term. And the second one is that time lost to upskilling. And because you want to avoid that sort of first point of mistakes, you want to upskill your teams for best practices. And every hour spent learning prompts and prompt engineering, context engineering, tweaking config, figuring out which tool to use in the first place, that has a cost. And if you don't factor that in from the start, the productivity gains can just look deflated. In terms of measuring those things, it's not necessarily straightforward. So a quick sort of crude way is to survey the staff on how much time they think they're saving. Now, devs, testers, everybody gets excited, that, you know, emotions are in there as well. So that's not as accurate as maybe the business might need. It's very subjective. So a more robust way was, as I mentioned in my first point, use the data you've already got. You know, you're probably tracking velocity, throughput, cycle times, incidents. And if those are moving in the right direction, then you know, that's just a much more objective way of seeing what's working or not. I say right direction because, and that's the uncomfortable bit, AI, just like any new tool or tech, often slows down teams before it speeds them up. There's a learning curve, you know, like, I mean, Cicla is very good at Vim, but, you know, there's a learning curve to it. And to someone less experienced, it may just seem that you know, type in your prompt and you're away. But in reality, the first few weeks can look like a loss. You know, if you want your production ready code, leaders are going to have to expect that dip and judge over the medium and long term, and not just the just the first few sprints, basically. And in terms of mitigation, I think the best way is to just be deliberate from the start. Avoid throwing 5 different tools at a team, letting them work out, you know, what works for them. Definitely involve them in the conversation, but just be super deliberate on how you're doing this. Define your AI ecosystem up front, and make sure everyone knows what tools are in play, what's available, and for which part of the life cycle, for planning, for testing, and everything in between. And that focus will give people a chance to get past that initial dip and reach the point where AI delivers genuine savings.
I think to jump in there, I guess there's this friction, right, between, and that's the uncomfortable truth, between the spend and productivity gains, right? Do you give your entire organization Claude code, right, or Claude Max subscriptions? Is that something that will be beneficial? I mean, I see it on Twitter, people are saying that they're shipping more, right? But is that something that like will translate to real value within your organization? And I think it goes back to setting those benchmarks and definition of done, right? You can go, well, we want to give our organization access to AI, right? If that is the question, then it becomes a little bit easier to rationalize that, right? As a technical lead speaking to your C-suite, you're like, okay, we have subscriptions for Google Workspace. There's Gemini inside there. So I think we can like encourage a little bit more Gemini usage versus OpenAI. And I think those are the little things that go a little bit further in curbing the tooling spend that you would have, finding tooling that already works with what you have within your organization. And also just framing them relative to those productivity gains that you were looking for, right? If it really is about reducing cycle time, then you focus on the things that are going to reduce cycle time, right? A chat interface does not reduce cycle time, at least not at face value. So you make sure that your tools embed into the things that matter. If you are a software team, code reviews, making sure that they are faster. The code output or the review output might not be great, but it'll help you spot and nitpick and do certain things when you're playing with Copilot. And that's really good for juniors, right? Because it means that the senior's time is not spent nitpicking over the little things, and that can be done by a trained Copilot, right? And then I think that goes a little bit further even into the type of, I guess, implementations that organizations end up doing, right? Using a state-of-the-art text-to-speech model will not give you significant gains over using something that is running locally like Orpheus, right? So you can use 11 Labs and pay $15 for, I guess, 10 minutes of audio, or you could use something that's running locally to be able to do things that are at least of similar quality, so you can get the outcomes that you're looking for. So there's like a delicate balance, right, where even engineering teams and leads need to make sure that what it is that they are focusing this use case or pilot, or whatever it is that they're trying to go into, is focused on the right ends. And that sort of like brings us into the next bit, right, which is, once you have decided that, okay, so I think we need a little bit more from AI, right? You're realizing that our code reviews are good, but we'd like to embed a bit of our style, right? How do you do this prompting thing? How do you make sure that it gets better? And I think part of that is being able to track usage, your observability, and that's more critical, I think, to an AI stack more than the type of model that you choose, right? Being able to track how and do evaluations on how well this thing is outputting relative to your organization's criteria becomes something important. So using tools like Langfuse, or more open source ones like Helicone, or even something that's more local like Evaluate, will go a long way in just evaluating the outputs of AI versus your organization. So you just benchmark and make sure that it is outputting the things that you're looking for before setting it out on your entire stack and pushing to production. I think that's a very big thing that matters to get to the part where you're framing savings as net gain, right? Instead of looking at it as we spent this much money on this license, instead it's we've reduced rework from this perspective, or we've outputted this much work with something that is local versus what would have happened with another model or something that's a contrast. So having that and translating that conversation, I think it's important to think a little bit more nuanced. It's not just like prompting. There's observability and the things that I guess leads and tech leads would still care about, still need to bake in here. And that's the part of the conversation that I feel a lot of the times goes neglected. But yeah, just my little contribution.
Okay. I mean, to build on what the guys have said, like basically you can't just throw money at AI and hope that it works, because each tool that's out there has its own strengths, its own weaknesses, and even the right model using on the right tool can have a big difference for you as well. So for me, it's all about the place that you put it is crucial. So what I would do is I would speak to your teams, get them involved, and ask them what the friction points are. You know, that could be requirements gathering, it could be testing, it could be coding, it could be anything during the development lifecycle. So once you've got your friction points, you kind of know where to go and you can get the right tools in. Once they're in, you need to get the actual team involved in using them. You can't just put them in a mandate and go, here they are, and that's it. Because you'll find that your team might not use them properly, or they might just not use them at all because it's not quite right for them. So you need to get that team buy-in for it as well. So big thing for me is make sure you encourage your team in all aspects of it. And then once you've got it all in there, again, it's going to cost you money. You want to look for enterprise software out there. Don't just go for all these new tools that don't offer anything but the coding ability. You want the centralized billing that you get. You want the monitoring for it, because that's going to be huge for you. Because the way the market is at the moment, there's a new tool every other day, and some of the tools that we've got at the moment, they'll be terrible by next week just because they haven't kept up. So you need to constantly reevaluate. I know that in a lot of the time, companies, we will take a tool and we'll be embedded with it and that's it forever, or we might evaluate maybe once a year or something. You can't do that with AI. You need to make sure you're doing it monthly at the very least, because by next month, that model that you're on could be very outdated and not be fit for the purpose you're doing. And same for the tool that you're using. So yeah, just make sure that you're constantly checking what's in the market. Make sure your team are involved in this as well. Get them to look out for stuff. Get them to go and test things out. And if they come up with something new, a new AI tool they found and it would work better in the position, give it a shot. Let them try it. Don't be afraid to try new things. But obviously, don't just put it in there and hope it works in production.
Yeah, I think that's a really good final point, because actually the people that are going to end up using it are the people that are going to know best what tools fit the specific context. Guys, I have so many questions for you myself following up on what you said, but I'm going to try and keep us to time. So I guess the last point on our agenda, and then we can move on to some sort of open questions, is this question that I think a lot of people will be really interested in is, so given our experience, given our sort of day-to-day working lives, what tools have you noticed that are out there today that are truly making a difference to our working days? And then just a sort of follow-up question on that, how safe are they to use and implement in different environments?
I'll take this one. That's all right.
Yeah.
So me personally, I've been using a thing called Kodo. it has plugins for like VS Code, IntelliJ. I mainly use it IntelliJ because I mainly do Java work. The way I use it is I will write the code myself because that's the bit I enjoy. I hate testing, so I'll go and ask it, write tests. Now, it won't be perfect in any way, but it'll get me all the basic tests out there that I don't really, you know, that just mindless and it's just copy and paste kind of work. Once it's done all that, I can come in and do like the edge case testing. And for me, I find that gives me like the biggest value in my workday. Codo also has this thing called Codo Merge. So you can hook it into your GitLab, your GitHub, whatever you're using. And basically, it'll run every time you do a pull request, and it'll just do a PR review for you. It'll check things for you. And I find that's really beneficial because I've worked in a lot of teams where you put stuff up, everyone's busy, and it takes them ages to go and do a code review. And there could be very obvious things that, you know, can be spotted and can get back to you quickly. That's what this does. I'm not saying, you know, once you've done everything on the points that it comes back, or even that they're all right, but it gives you a good basis of, okay, I missed this, I'll go and get this done. It just means that whoever's coming doing the code review for you later, you know, they don't have to spend as much time looking at all of these nitpicky points. They're all done. But for other people, I'm not going to say like, you know, Codo's what everyone should use. For me, the tools that are there are a bit of a personal choice, maybe not to the actual person themselves, but for the team. So like I said before is, you know, you need to get your team involved and you need to make sure that the tools you're using are right for the issues that they have. So one team, they might have, you know, coding, that's the bit they don't really like, and it's the bit that's got the most issues. Great, get a coding assistant in there. If it's PR reviews, like I've said, you can get tools for that. Or it could be stuff like requirements gathering or planning that they feel that are the worst parts for them. Get an AI tool in there, help them out with that. Makes their lives a bit easier, makes it a bit slicker in your development life cycle. What I will say is, with a lot of these tools, context is key as well. So coding assistants, you know, they can be good, but they're better when you give them context. So they're better when you give them the rest of your code base, or even if they just need extra things like documentation. There are like MCP servers out there that can do this for you. One that I use a lot is Context 7. So with that, basically it's got all the documentation ever existed, basically, that lives on there. So if you're working away on a Spring Boot project and you're not quite sure how to use this particular library, you can go and ask Context 7. So I have it hooked into the JetBrains AI assistant. I go and type it a little question, it comes back going, here's your documentation, and it saves me ages from working through all the documentation itself. Yeah, the other thing I would say is about, is it safe for us? Now, a lot of the tools out there, they will have enterprise tiers. They're the ones that you want to go for. They're the ones that are a bit safer. But make sure you do look at things like how they're going to manage your data, because some of them might be selling that onwards, even though it's an enterprise edition. So just be mindful of that. If you're not really bothered about your data going anywhere, great. But if you are, you need to make sure you look at it. And the other thing you need to look at is how your teams use AI, because AI is quite new, and the issue at the moment is it's quite a big vector for cyber attacks, and people aren't quite clued up on that. So there can be things like malicious prompts that go in. So you can't just copy and paste prompts from places and hope they work. So yeah, just be careful. We're, you know, everyone out there, just use your common sense when you use these tools.
I don't know what you're talking about, Dale. I love scrolling through Spring documentation. Yeah, so we've been doing tool reviews recently, and there's a lot out there at the moment. You know, you'll know that if you scroll through LinkedIn for 5 minutes. And a lot of the tools are similar. You know, they use similar buzzwords, but they do slightly different things. I think generally I've been thinking about them in sort of a few different categories. So I guess firstly, you've got the coding and developer experience productivity tools. They're made for and by devs. So things like Claude Code, Open Code, or even like full AI first IDEs like Cursor has been beneficial and really interesting to use. they take the pain out of writing boilerplate code, refactoring, documentation, and leaves the fun stuff for me. So I quite like that. And in the right time, in the right hands, it saves hours. But in a corporate setting, you have to match that speed with security, strong data handling policies, etc. Otherwise, as Dale said, you'll risk leaking IP into a system that you don't control. I've seen curious teams happily use ChatGPT at work for weeks, and the company didn't have an AI policy. You know, go for it. Why not? But then security and IT step in and ban it overnight because the guardrails weren't in place. Yeah, and then the second category I'd say that I've really found useful are those existing tools and apps that we know and love that aren't AI first, but are adopting it quickly. These are the tools like planning, collaboration, sort of things. So this is where adoption is often easiest because teams and businesses already buy into tools like Miro, Atlassian, Office 365. And the AI features are just somehow appearing and updating overnight. So if you're at the start of this journey, I say it's definitely worth checking out what you already have access to. You know, you can summarize meetings in Google, Meets or Teams. You can generate Jira tickets directly from Confluence. And you can have really good brainstorming sort of idea generation in Miro. And because it's built into these trusted environments and we're familiar with how they're used, there's much less friction and fewer worries from like IT and legal. And finally, there are these sort of emerging tools, to maybe politically say that. Some of these are brilliant, and we have checked them out as a squad. So we've looked at like Base 44 and Lovable, and I guess this category doesn't just cover like vibey coding stuff, just anything that's super new and, you know, brand new to the marketplace and sort of in progress. Because we're finding those tools don't have the necessary, you know, security, data governance, or, you know, integration with Slack and things like that, the rest of the tech needs at enterprise scale. That doesn't mean ignoring them. It just means sort of piloting them in a sandbox. You know, make sure the guardrails are there and sort of, you know, make them earn their place in production. So for me, the pattern is clearer as I know we've had a chance to sort of explore these tools. And to answer the question more directly, the tools that actually stick and that are most useful for me are either deeply embedded into existing workflows, or it's tools that are paired with strong developer, BA, tester experience, as then we have oversight of the security side of things. And the balance between productivity and safety is what makes AI sustainable and not just a little experiment.
Yeah, just to add on that, right? Like the way you, or at least the way that I would be able to look at these is looking at the things that cause friction within teams and things that people complain about. I think at our last engagement, Kareem, context switching became a very big thing that we needed to be able to juggle through, right? When you have all of these services, all of this documentation sitting in fragmented in different places, it's really convenient to be able to find it where you are working, right? So I think focusing on tooling, on workflow native tooling is something that's going to be important, and that's going to help, right? A chat interface that's divorced from your current workspace does not yield that much great results. I think according to the Stack Overflow survey, 4 out of every 5 developers use AI at least once a month, but only 5% have the confidence that it is doing something that is correct, right? And in the results that it outputs. So there's a bit of I guess, there's adoption, but there's not a lot of confidence, right? And I think a lot of it is in making sure that we can be able to frame the gains, that these things fit the environments that we're looking for, right? So if we're in a corporate fit requires data governance as well as integration, right? So your tools need to integrate a little bit well. And as you're creating all of, or a plethora of this information, and things like that, ensuring that safeguards are in place, guardrails, ensuring that access control is in place. It's something that's critical. So it goes back to that enterprise bit. But again, if you are a team that's experimenting and you're at the precipice of things, your workflow might look different to someone else's, right? And I think it goes back to Dale's point where we need to just spend a bit of time figuring out what a team is looking for, right? So in a world where you have an all AI team or an all human team, I think we as Daemon play a nice balance in between where we augment, I guess, the capabilities of most organizations and teams with just AI, right? And that's the approach and appeal that we're taking. And we think that's what's going to win. It's not replacing your core team. It's rather enabling it and equipping it with the next set of abilities so that they can shift their mental thinking to a higher state. And that's what we're here for.
What a nice point to finish on as well. Right, we're making our way through the webinar quite rapidly, so we're going to move on to the live Q&A section now. I think to keep us to time, I'll ask a question and then I'll just get one person to jump in, so have your buzzers ready. Just the first person to jump in the first person to get there can answer. Right, so we've got one here that's about sticking on the team approach. So how do you introduce AI in a way that fits with your own team culture rather than just being another unused license?
I think I'll drop that one. Seems like I've been on about team the entire time. So I mean, you know, I've kept hammering home the same thing: is you need to speak to your team, and it's all about adoption over mandated. You can't go, here's Copilot, everyone use it for everything, and hope that it works and works well. A lot of people won't use it because they might not know how to, they might not like it, it might not fit their workflow. So make sure you're doing what's right for each team. You know, if you've got 10 teams out there, it might be different for each one. So speak to each of them, find their pain points, and use the right thing for them. Once you've found the right tools for them, the other thing is about helping them use them, because you'll find that a lot of people with AI tools at the moment, some will be very hesitant to use them because they fear it's going to replace them. And some are hesitant because they just don't know how to use them at all. So it's all about doing things like show and tells with them, like knowledge transfers, and encouraging people to get involved in the first place with it. Because the last thing you want is someone to come down to you and go, you have to use this, and in 10 months it's going to take your job. It's I will learn how to use this in my way that works best for me. Because for me, I don't like to use these agentic coding where it just writes the entire app for you. I don't like that because I enjoy doing the actual coding. So I would rather have that assistant where I go, oh, how do I do this with this library? Or I can't remember how to do a switch statement. Can you show me? You know, that sort of thing. You know, just get those done. Then I can just do the bits I enjoy, and I can also get it do the testing because no one enjoys testing except for testers. So yeah, so speak to your teams. That's the main thing, and get them involved. Adoption over mandating.
Love that. No one enjoys testing. We've just had someone on testing for the last sprint and they haven't had a good time. Brilliant. Okay, so next question is around governance and guardrails. What governance or guardrails do you put in place so that we know that the AI tools remain safe without killing innovation?
I'll take that. I think I'll echo what I've been speaking about a little bit more. One, data guardrails. I think those are important. Ensuring that sensitive or customer data never leaves your environment is tantamount, right? Depending on the space that you're in. AI adoption is huge in technology, media, and telecoms, right? And that just so happens also to be where I guess innovation sits, and we interface with a lot of financial systems and what, right? So we ensuring that the data guardrails are there, even just software consultancies, is something that's important, whether that's an AI policy or what, just ensure that you have something that speaks to it and puts in some guardrails about what people can and aren't able to do. If you're giving people access to actual tooling, right, it's enforce it via role-based access control, and make sure that you have approved integrations. I think that becomes important, because then you have this enclave, you have this corporate safety that you would be shielded by, and it ensures that there's just not malicious abuse, and you can have observability relative to that. And that actually ushers me into the next point, which is just ensuring that you have observability of the things that you're doing. I don't think just setting and forgetting AI is not an intuitive thing to do. It is a really smart autocomplete, right? So it's only as smart as what goes in, so garbage in, garbage out. And so you have to always ensure that as an organization or as a business, that you are sitting right there in the middle, and you are evaluating and observing everything that is going on relative to it, right? And putting those things in place is something that I think we have a bunch of fun doing, putting in a proxy, because it can be as simple as that, right? It's just putting a proxy, and you get access to what everyone is asking and prompting. And I think the last bit is just lightweight approvals. I think these help in not killing innovation, right? I think when you create new tools, establishing the boundaries before wider rollouts is something that's important, as well as just like balancing that safety element with innovation, right? So everyone wants to use the shiny new tool, but we have to have an element of safety and understand the space that we're in. If you work in banking, it's not glamorous, it's banking, and you should have known what you were getting yourself into, right? So expecting a lot of change in a space that is plagued by regulation becomes hard. So you instead find innovative ways around making sure that daily work is a little bit better. And that's what you maybe focus on, right? So I think there is a place for AI in most teams, and they can innovate to a great deal. It's just finding where that balance is, and how we ensure enabling our teams to just experiment and try new things out. So data guardrails, observability, as well as just lightweight approvals, I think will go a long way for most teams.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm hearing basically, don't just rely on that out of the box AI, try and get a bit of customization in there. And that's something that the AI first squad would be able to help with, certainly. All right, so we've got a nice short and sweet one. Is AI worth the risk given the effort it takes to implement?
My turn, I guess. Yeah, thanks for your question. I'll sort of push back and say, I don't think it's a question on whether, should we use AI? Is it worth the effort? It's about how do we use AI? Can we minimize the effort to embrace it? Because whether businesses like it or not, people are already using these tools. So to reiterate what Dale said, and maybe that's the best starting point, what are you guys using for your whole life cycle? What works for you? That's something you should ask the team. And if businesses don't provide a safe, supported way of using AI, staff are going to reach for them anyway, often without permission and not always in line with IT, data, and legal. That's where something, as simple as an AI use policy really matters. It's a starting point for this conversation. Here's what's okay, here's what's not okay, these are the steps we take to protect data, etc. You probably have a document like this already. Don't copy and paste into this website that converts JSON to YAML. But it's about extending that to be intentional and transparent with AI tools specifically. So without that, you'll have shadow AI sort of creeping in under the radar, which for me is far riskier than just not doing AI or doing AI in a non-productive way. So if you're a tech leader and I really had to convince you, I'd say the reality is if we ignore AI, we risk being left behind. Our competitors who embrace it responsibly will, they'll deliver faster, they'll deliver cheaper, less friction. And, we're still debating, is GPT-5 better than Claude Opus, Yeah, so sorry to answer the question with another question, but to answer directly, the question isn't AI versus no AI. is AI versus unmanaged AI, which is the far bigger risk. Fran, you're muted. Had to happen once, didn't it?
It was me. I lost the muting game. We've had one more question slip in that I think we have time for. Just a real quick one. AI outputs always come with the disclaimer of having to check it works, as you cannot 100% trust it to be correct. This makes people question if it's worth using. How can we get teams past this liability barrier?
I take this one. So, I mean, yeah, so AI isn't 100% correct. That is always going to be true. But if you think of this if we take a coding sense, I'm an engineer, so this is why we go for it. You'll find that, you don't trust people to be 100% correct all the time. That's why we do code reviews. It's not that we don't trust them, it's that people can miss things. People can be wrong with their, with things that they assume. So, what I would say is, you're doing this already for other members of your team, and it's just, a sanity thing. And that's exactly what you need to do with AI as well. Don't trust it wholeheartedly, but also, you can't just assume everything it says is wrong. You should have enough knowledge in whatever you're using it with to know whether it's right or wrong. So, if you are an engineer and you're using it to help you code, great. But it should only be helping you. It shouldn't be doing all of that for you. Because if you don't understand what you're putting in production, then there's a load of risk in there straight away. And it's just the same as if you had a junior, you wouldn't get them to ship to production without any questions. You would get them checked each time. So just treat AI as a junior member of your team.
I think that's a really interesting approach to take, actually. Yeah.
And I think it sits right there in the middle, right? AI is it's non-deterministic, right? So it will not get 100% every time, right? That's not how it was created. You can increase the temperature and it'll hallucinate something else, right? So to anticipate or expect 100% every time is something that wouldn't work out. But you can have tools that do, for example, model evaluations, where you have a model evaluating another model to make sure that what you want. But at the end of it, the safeguards and you doing the evaluations, you're the last gate of defense for the organization, right? And that's why we still need that human element. So AI is making a very big difference in telecommunications, media, but not so much in hospitality, because that's where the human element still matters a lot. It might be great at customer support, but when I have a problem in my room, I want to talk to a human. When I can't reach my bank, I want to talk to a human. When that system is down, I need a human. And there are parts, so you can't get rid of that, right? The core of your business would still be operating. It's just augmenting it with all of these bits to just make it a little bit better and make the experience of daily work a little bit better. So elevating your cognitive experience on a daily basis from the mundane and repetitive and boring things to the more exciting things. And I think that's what AI did for all of us. It just, oh, this is exciting. I can think about that now. I can be an expert at this in 5 minutes, but which is not true. But I think it's just that false sense of confidence that it gives when you pair that with a really, really cracked engineer, and the things that you get out become super amazing, right? And I think that's where a lot of the focus should be right now. But in the same regard, we tend to overestimate the next 2 years and underestimate the next 10, right? So in doing so, we don't know what comes in the future. Maybe it becomes autonomous, but for now, I think we still need humans.
Can I just quickly add a sort of shameless self-plug? Just because I got a blog post sort of coming out, hopefully within the next month on this topic. As the guy said, don't trust 100%. You don't really, who in this world do you trust 100%? But yeah, there's ways from going from like 50% trust, like it's wrong quite often, to 90% trust, where it's like it's on the right lines, it's producing code, it's producing outputs that what I want, they're accurate. And you can do stuff like, for about a year ago, it was all about like prompt engineering and getting the prompts right. Now people are talking about context engineering. How can we get project context into these tools? So those sort of things are worth exploring. But yeah, the human size will always prevail. Yeah.
What a nice message to end on. And I guess everyone keep their eyes out for Karim's blog post. Hot off the press, you heard it here first. Brilliant. All right, we're hitting time. We're coming to the end. I hope you've enjoyed the discussion today, and I hope we've provided you with a bit of food for thought. I'm going to try my best to just give you a really brief summary of what we've covered. So we started talking about how do we demonstrate tangible return on investment. And I think the guys really drilled down on being able to define that metric. What is it that is crucial for the business? Defining a baseline and defining, I guess, when you're going to measure that. But crucially, to keep the team who's using it in mind. So let's keep returning to the team and getting some update from them as to how that piece of technology is hopefully improving their experience of their day-to-day work. Being very deliberate about integrating and upskilling the staff. So not just pushing AI tools in a top-down fashion, but making sure that the staff have the tools to be able to use those tools. And that's the way really that you're going to increase adoption. I think people really need to think about how they frame that operational cost for a net gain to the powers that be, let's say. But crucially, just always keeping an eye on the security of all of these different AI tools. There's some brand new, spanking, shiny new things coming out of the box, and we all love a market disruptor, but just make sure that you're not integrating it without thinking about security. So if you've got any questions or ideas that you'd like to explore, please do reach out to the team. You've got the emails there. We also have an AI first landing page where you can find an AI readiness assessment tool. So if you're at the start of your AI integration journey, you could head over to our landing page and take a look there. But other than that, I think just on behalf of myself, Karim, Sihle, and Dale, I'd just like to say a huge thank you. And of course, on behalf of Daemon, and we hope you've enjoyed the last hour. Thanks very much.